it's very interesting reflection on what you were saying. It occurred to me that when I think about what's now regarded as higher education and that very close employer sector engagement, the kind of places I think of are the Royal Agricultural College, now university. I think of Robert Gordon's in Aberdeen on the oil industry. I think of Dundee Tech with the gaming and graphics people there. But the level of employer engagement you're getting, how do you, once you've designed a course, to keep it near market, how often do you then have to refresh it? Or have you got a sort of continuous revolution going on? Because to stay near market, especially in some of the areas you described, there needs to be a constant dialogue.
I mean, I think that's a challenge. Because we're so new, the courses are still fresh. I mean, the Escape undergraduate ones start this September. So that's not something we've had to do just yet, but we're just now saying with our courses that started 3 years ago, that were not technical, so not quite the urgency that you get with technical, we need to build in a system for review. I think to really work in the technology side, you need to be looking at it every year, at least. And are you finding in these companies that there is an existing infrastructure? I think back to Gordon Brown's ambitions about university for industry, but that tapped into a lot of companies like Ford and others who had big internal training structures, but they're not allowed to use the university word in this country. They do use it, they do call them employee universities in other countries.
McDonald's University.
Yeah. Do you mean like a corporate university?
Well, a corporate, yeah, corporate. Are you finding that you could plug into that?
Not yet, but we're obviously very interested in the degree apprenticeship side, and we're having conversations with quite a range of companies on that. And I think that will be one of the things that comes out of the impact of the levy, is working more closely with what's already existing in their training and development sections.
Okay.
I mean, from an employer's point of view, that's where you'd start with your levy, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so Chris Williams is the president of Oxford entrepreneurs who are working with us. You've just finished your degree?
That's correct.
Running his own business while he was doing it, and the SCI Business School has set up its own little incubator, of which you are the head honcho of the Game of Thrones or whatever games you're playing. Just give us a few words about what you're doing and also about what you've heard this afternoon.
No, of course. Well, thanks very much for having me today. So what would I say about Oxford Entrepreneurs? We are the largest student-run entrepreneurship society in Europe. We've been around since 2002. We are affiliated with the university, but not a part of the university, which is quite important to make, very important point to make. And I think it's important to say, because I've heard a lot about these programs not providing soft skills, but I think when you go to university, you've got to look at it more broadly. There's many student societies, some of which are run like businesses. I'd say Oxford Entrepreneurs does. Before Oxford Entrepreneurs, I ran RAG, which was mentioned before. We turned over a profit in 1 year of £100,000, and compare that to other RAGs, that's nothing. Loughborough turned over a profit of over £2 million. So you can get these skills by joining these societies, and most students do. I think now students are paying more money. They are really looking to develop these soft skills. And that's why they come to us. And when you were talking before about the workshops that run at the university, these are the sorts of things we provide. And the businesses we talk to, this week I've been talking to Accenture, Skyscanner, Newton Consulting. They are providing these workshops, so they are coming to us as well. So I think that's something to really pay attention to. And also what I found really interesting about the talks Peter was saying with FOMO, I think that's mainly due to the approach, the global approach that students are taking these days. You can easily apply to a university anywhere in the world. And people are looking further afield. I mean, this evening I intend to apply to universities elsewhere. This is only a one-role job. And I think because of this, people are only looking for these prestigious jobs, and that's why the apprenticeships are not necessarily jumped on straight away. I think it's something that needs to be changed. Because at the moment, everyone I speak to wants to be an investment banker or a management consultant, and there's just not enough of those jobs going around. So it's something that needs to change, and the attitude we're talking about here, where a fear of failure, that's something we're always trying to overcome. But I think it's a very British thing. When I go to Silicon Valley, we don't see that. Everyone wants to fail. Failure is celebrated. So I think it's a cultural change that needs to be done, and I think it can be done at the universities, and it's something the CIPD Business School is working to do. They've just announced the Foundry, which is going to be a new project focused on entrepreneurship with an even bigger incubator than the one they've got already. So I think these thoughts are being heard and action is being taken. I mean, I'm from Oxford. This is a very local area for me. Maybe this isn't something that's happening across the entirety of the UK.
Okay, questions, comments? Microphone down to the front here.
Thanks. A question for Roxanne, actually. Going back to your description of working with businesses to develop courses. I've got a personal view that one of the effects of the rapid changes in higher education over the last few years is that some universities have undergone a little bit of an identity crisis, I think, and have a degree of mission confusion. And it sometimes manifests itself in internal endless debates about whether students are customers or not, for example. And I guess my point is whether you think there's any evidence that businesses are keener to work with you because you are, in fact, unashamedly a business.
Well, the businesses we work with a lot of, oh, sorry, I need to hold this thing up. They work with a lot of institutions, I think. So it's not that they're just working with us, but I do think that because the wider Pearson is a business in itself, that we do have a kind of strong understanding, or a unique insight, if you like, as to how businesses actually work. And so making arrangements with the businesses, the organisation of time, the flexibility, all those kind of things come quite naturally to us. Whereas I know from talking to them that sometimes they've found it very difficult to work with educational institutions who have very fixed times, or who will do this and who will do that. So I think that helps. And another thing that helps is that a lot of businesses want to have a link with Pearson. So that's another aspect, I think. But I know that you've got heaps. 600. Yes.
Question, comment?
Also, sorry, Simon Clements, Roffey Park. A question for Roxanne. Really just asking how you select the organisations and the businesses that you work with that contribute to the programmes. What sort of selection process? Because I think I heard that you're oversubscribed. And also the type of businesses that you're looking for, because I think the businesses that you listed were all of a type. They felt all of a type that they were sizable BTs, IBMs and the like. So a two-part question.
Well, we did start with larger companies, and we were very pragmatic. We started with institutions that we had contacts with, of which there is quite a few. And we would go and meet with them. I had two people who, that was their role, was to go and meet with them. You had to find people within the business who were really enthusiastic about working with you, so that became one of the criteria, if you like. And then people would then often introduce us to other people, and then to other people. So it's really worked through a kind of a network of contacts. We are now going through the process of working out what businesses to approach in terms of apprenticeships. And with that, we are looking at places we don't necessarily have any contacts with. So at the moment, we're doing some research, and ideally what we would like is to have some big businesses and medium ones and some very small startup ones. Where we don't have as much in those two categories, and that's an area that we're explicitly tackling at the moment, because I think from a student's point of view, the vast majority are employed by small places, not by the big places. And so we don't want to give them a misapprehension of what the business world is like. This is just one little bit, one small bit actually, of the business world. We do work with some SMEs, which I didn't mention, including some very small startups, partly because people wouldn't have heard of them. But the idea would be to have a balanced diet, really, of businesses across that, and that's what we're working to at the moment.
Simon, in my experience too, I mean, I sit in lots of forums of businesses talking about apprenticeships, and it's always this usual suspect. And it's partly, I think, Roxanne, just size and scale. I mean, because they've got the big resources, they've got these big training budgets. They are the ones that are saying, oh my God, It's usually the accountants or the CFO that's walked across the corridor to the head of HR and L&D and said, oh my God, you know how much we're going to pay, therefore go sort it out. But I passionately believe also, as you said, we've got to make sure that we are bringing the smaller and mid-sized businesses into this spectrum. I think some of the big businesses are trying to work in partnership with smaller businesses as well, help them. We're also hearing big businesses talking about things like as part of working with them, if you're part of a supply chain, there's going to be one of the conditions of working with us. So I think we've got the German Mittelstand model, things of that nature, where we connect businesses better through their supply chains and what other ecosystems, because this is hard stuff for a small business. It's hard. A lot of these businesses never even thought about apprenticeships. So it's hard stuff, and they do need the help of big business as well.
And I think with the little businesses, it depends what you're trying to do with them, but if we were talking about apprenticeships, this is something we're looking at the moment, is what sort of due diligence do we need? In fact, on big businesses as well, but these apprenticeships will take at least 3 years, and obviously if you're talking about startups, most fail. So how, what are you going to do if that happens, and how to try and make sure that you're choosing ones where it's a bit less likely to happen, and we're working through that. We're working through that at the moment. If it's not that though, if it's other things about helping with design, etc., then it can be open to a huge range of different types of businesses, and it depends on who is the keenest on the subject area really that you're talking about.
Just you mentioning the Mittelstand, when one of Michael Heseltine's big concerns is, and one thing that I found when I was working for the British Chamber of Commerce, is the centralised nature of HR and training. So major universities in, say, Leeds would be looking at the major employers in Leeds, a lot of which would be branch companies. The managers on the ground simply did not take those decisions. It's the Henry Kissinger, who do you call? And that applied to quite large, medium-sized businesses, that basis all over. And that disconnect was one of the most disruptive things in trying to find the answer to who a university should then go out and speak to as its local or regional business.
Yeah, it's a good point, Neil, and I think we will continue to see that. I mean, as organisations seek to try to manage some of these budgets, they will naturally tend to gravitate to more central models. But I think also L&D is changing a lot. I think, how it gets distributed through the company, meeting some of the local needs as well as some of the collective needs. I believe it should become much more strategic. A lot of it's not being thought about strategically in businesses, and then you get a very different dialogue. And of course, the nature of learning and development itself. I mean, with technology, and we talk about young generations, self-directed learning, and very, very different roles that learning and development, particularly in business, can have to play, which is more as an aggregator and a curator of saying, well, okay, here's some really cool stuff. How do I access it? As opposed to, and you can see them. You talk to heads of L&D and say, I start my training from scratch. Well, why on earth would you do that? Why would you write management and development programs from scratch? But they do it, and that's been the history of a lot of L&D. So I think on the other side of that equation is there's got to be a lot of rethinking of learning and development in the corporate world.
Okay, well, one last question, and then I have to wind it up.
Thank you, yes. My name is Paul Bangal, and I work both in business and in academia, and just keep interest in both. It's a question for Roxanne, actually. I'm just thinking from a student's perspective, with your sort of alternative method of teaching, what are the sort of costs involved from a student's perspective in are the courses funded, or are the students paying themselves? How do they compare in comparison to traditional degree courses?
Well, our degrees are designated for student loan company funding, so students can get the student loan company funding like other places can. We do have some courses that are about 4 or 5 months long. They're super intensive courses. The students are in 40 hours a week in the Escape Studios part. These are not degree courses. They are eligible for career development loans. Yeah, that's how it's funded.
Okay, well, our online viewer is desperate to go out and get their Costa coffee and be seen to be living the full online experience, so we'd better let them go. Can I ask you to join me in thanking our speakers and contributors today?